Welcome back to Buckets, WNBA edition. I am your host, Jim Turvey. We're doing the other conference. Most people go Eastern Conference first, then Western Conference. We decided to switch it up here. We went Western, then Eastern, moving our way across the country that way. I was joined by Danielle Alvari for Western Conference. And I'm joined by Kayla Dos Santos, my East Coast expert here. When I think East Coast, I think Kayla, I think Connecticut, I think the Northeast in general. Kayla, thanks for hopping on with me. How are things going?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me. East Coast, best coast. I think that's the saying. So, yeah, let's dive in. I'm ready to do it.
Yeah, we gotta have a little coastal pride here. I'm an East Coaster. We were just talking about, we're both Northeast even specifically. So this is our conference. This is the conference that gave us the champion last year. The Northeast even specifically gave us the champion. Before we get into the team specifically, I kind of wanted to get your feel for the season as a whole as we're approaching. What are your thoughts on this season? What are you kind of excited for? We'll talk team specific, so maybe kind of broader. And any thoughts we won't get to cover in this episode? What are some of your thoughts going into the season?
Well, for starters, I'm a diehard UConn fan, so I'm most excited to see Paige Beckers.
Well, you're flying high right now. This is
Yes.
your year.
Amen. Well, it's not going to be this summer as a Sun fan, which we'll get into,
Yeah,
but
we'll cover that.
but yeah, no, I'm excited to see what Paige can do. It's no secret that UConn has a certain kind of style of play, and she fit so seamlessly in that kind of style of play. So I'm really interested to see what she'll look like with the reins off a little bit. So that, and I'm just excited. I don't know, for just another season. It's every season is the same kind of excitement, and just building on every year. The league getting bigger and bigger, and more popular. Now with Golden State. So it's just I'm excited. It's gonna be a great year.
Yeah, I think it is indeed going to be a great year. Let's get right into the previews here because I was going to ask you about your son, but we'll get to them. They're the third team on the list here. We're once again kind of going alphabetically. We'll go through the Eastern Conference. This episode will be a little bit quicker just because there's only 6 teams right now. We have a conference imbalance. There's 7 teams in the West, 6 teams in the East. So we'll go through the 6 teams. Same setup as last episode. We'll kind of do a little mini season review, do some players in, some players out. Talk about coaching, talk about season preview. We'll do review of last year, preview this year, and then approach the win total, which is out there for all these teams right now. So we're going to start off with the Atlanta Dream. The Atlanta Dream, a team that I feel like I keep finding myself interested by and keep getting burned by. And then by the time I'm out on them, then they turn good again. They're a very hard team to read historically. Last year, they were 15-25. They did sneak into the playoffs. They were the 8th seed in the playoffs. They're summarily swept by the Liberty. And it was kind of another underwhelming season if you go by the talent on the roster and the result that they got. So not surprisingly, they had some changes. They had Tina Charles go out, Brittany Griner and Brianna Jones come in. So some real size there in the post. And they have a new coach. That's the big thing with Atlanta, I think, when we're looking at this team for this year. Carl Smesko, pace and threes guy, kind of similar to Lynn Roberts when we were talking about the Sparks. It's going to be a lot of threes, fast pace. And I think it's a funky fit with the roster, but I think it could be interesting. So my 10-word preview is new coach who loves the 3, Ryan Howard breakout season ? So we will see on Ryan. I'm sure we'll talk plenty about her, but what is your 10-word preview of the Atlanta Dream?
Mine is Smesko ball with non-typical floor spacers is going to be interesting. As you mentioned, with BG and Bree Jones coming in, not exactly players that are going to space the floor, and that's what he likes to do. So we'll see.
It's going to be really interesting. I mean, what I found notable is, so we've had one preseason game on the Dream. I bet the over did not hit. It looked great in the first half. And then when we got some of the subs in the second half, it slowed down. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get that, missed it by a couple points. But I mean, Brittany Griner had 2 threes made in like the first 5 possessions. So I think he is going to enable her. Now, Brianna Jones is going to be in the post. Brianna Jones isn't stretching her game out to the 3-point line. I think Brittany Griner, especially when they are playing those 2 big lineups, maybe looking at some like first quarter 3 attempts, like, so if you can get that as niche as possible, because I think when her and Bree Jones are on the floor, Smesko doesn't want 2 people in the paint. I think he wants spacing. I think he wants Bree Jones in the paint, great offensive rebounder, much better rebounder than Brittany Griner. I think that he's going to be fine with Brittany Griner coming out to the 3-point line. So I'm going to be looking at her threes in general. But overall, I mean, Ryan Howard, I think, could really break out. She took 9 shots in this preseason game. Or, she took 9 threes. She took 11 shots. 9 of them were threes. Another one, her foot was on the line. So she was trying to take 10 of her 11 shots from behind the arc. I think she's going to go absolutely bananas there. When we had Calvin Wetzel on for some of our preseason previews here, he talked about Ryan Howard to lead the league in threes. That already looks like a great bet. He talked for her for most improved player. I think that's potentially live. What when you look at this team and Spesko, what really pops out to you? I mean, you talked about kind of the funky fit. Is there anything else that you're looking at with this dream team?
That was the thing that stood out the most for me. Um, in During his time at Florida Gulf Coast, I went back on her hoop stats as far back as it goes 2009. They've been they were top six in the country every year in 3-point attempts. And as you just mentioned, Ryan might lead the league herself in total 3-point attempts. So um, I think that's the thing that stands out the most to me. I really hope that Jordan Canada injury doesn't end up being anything too serious. I think it came out today. Doesn't seem like it's like nothing's torn, knock
Yeah.
on wood.
Yep.
Looks like she's going to be reevaluated, I think, in 2 weeks. But if it does end up being something longer, I think Tahina Paopao kind of fell to the perfect landing spot. I think she would fit in perfectly in his system. She's a very, very, very good 3-point shooter. So I think that could be something that ended up working out really well. Yeah, those are my thoughts overall.
There's a lot to dig in. I want to circle back to one thing. You going back in the Her Hoops database. Love that, first of all. Love her hoop stats. And to be top 6 every year, this isn't like being top 6 in WNBA. There's like multiple hundreds of college. Like it is crazy to be that consistently focused on the 3. So 100% that is it's his thing. It is like we will be shooting threes. The Canada injury is very important to address. I'm glad you mentioned it. I'd written my notes out before the injury and I forgot to add that note in. It's incredibly important because there isn't a ton of guard depth there, but I'm with you in that. I was just texting with some folks today, like, are we going to go back to Haley Jones? I don't think they have to now. I think Tahina Paopao is a really good fit, great 3-point shooter who is going to fit his system really well. And, we talked about rookie of the year on the awards preview, and maybe if Jordan Canada, hopefully, again, knock on wood, I'm right there with you. If she's back in 2-3 weeks, even a month, Paopao not going to be able to be in the race. If she's the starting point guard all year for the Atlanta Dream, especially with the threes that she's going to be taking in the system, I would be very interested in that number. So that's something to just keep an eye on from the betting side there, like a nice little long shot for you. Let's talk about their win total. So their win total is at 21.5. This means that to clear it, they'd have to be exactly a 500 team. The Atlanta Dream are kind of the embodiment of a 500 team. Like they always seem like they should be a little bit over and they go under. They seem like under and go over. They're very confusing. I'm drawn in again. I'm leaning over. The Canada injury is a little bit nerve-wracking for sure, but I do think that Paopao is a pretty solid fit if she does have to miss time. And I just really think Ryan Howard is going to put together. This is a team that defensively has always been pretty solid. And the math game hasn't reached the WNBA to the, potentially, too much. It's reached the NBA where you see teams like the Celtics unable to adjust out of it. But if they are going to be able to outmath teams a lot of nights just by taking a lot of threes with good 3-point shooters, I think that they're going to be able to win a fair amount of games. So I'm leaning towards the over here. They've burned me before. That's kind of why it's a lean and not a full over. They just have kind of that Atlanta Dream thing that seems to kind of keep them grounded at times. But I'm a big Smesco believer, so I'm leaning over. Where are you with this team in regards to the win total?
I agree. Agree on the lean. In 2024, Ryan Howard was the player that I lost the most money on. So
I think that's very, very fitting. She's like, I think the Atlanta Dream were my team I lost the most money on. It is like, they just draw you in. They seem so good. And Ryan, but that's the tantalizing thing. The ceiling is definitely there. So, all right, we both lean over on the Dream. Let's move along to the Sky. The Sky are the next team. Again, we're doing this alphabetically. This isn't, the second best team in the East. It's not the second worst team in the East. Last year, they were among the bottom of the rankings of the league as a whole. They were 13-27. But in a lot of ways, I think it was, a big step forward for the franchise as a whole. Angel Reese arrived and brought with it a lot of attention to Chicago. They had Teresa Weatherspoon. They started the year off really well and kind of looked like, I think they were like 5-1 through 6 games or something. And the Weatherspoon thing looked like it was great. Camila Cardoso was going to be joining midway through the year. Then they started to lose some close games. Then some injuries hit, and they ended up not making the playoffs. Now they're in this weird spot where, they kind of had hit the reset button, but there's so much intrigue with a, Reese Cardoso front court that the ownership team's like, all right, let's go for this. So they bring back Courtney Vandersloot. They bring in Ariel Atkins in a trade that a lot of people gave a lot of crap to at the time. I think has aged a little bit better, although Sonia Citron has looked excellent in the preseason so far. And they brought in Beck Allen. Those are three really good starters to go alongside Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. One big name they lost, though, Kennedy Carter. And I do think this will be pretty interesting to see. She really carried the offense at times. When she was off the court, the offense really fell off. They've got a new coach in Tyler Marsh, another assistant from Las Vegas. Talked about him. Talked about Natalie Nakase over with the Golden State Valkyrie. This is Tyler Marsh over with Chicago Sky, another beloved assistant coach. I think he's going to be potentially one of a really strong batch of hires in the W this year as a whole. My 10-word preview from all of that: selling the farm for a 7th seed ceiling seems silly. A lot of S's there. I went the alliteration route. Kayla, what is your 10-word preview for the Sky?
Mine is that I'm all aboard the Cardoso train. Choo choo.
She's looked awesome to start. So are you like, how high are we talking here? How high are you on Cardoso?
Pretty high. I mean, I think in terms of like true centers, when we talk about Stewie, we talk about Asia, we talk about Nafisa, the three best players in the league. They're not those like true centers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think she has a very, very high ceiling to be I don't want to put a number on it, but a top 5 in the league. And especially I think a new kind of level is going to be unlocked for her with Courtney Vandersloot. Sloot's going to just feed her, I think.
The pick and roll could be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And I know there were some questions last year about the fit with her and Angel. I don't think that was the reason they lost as many games as they did last year. So I think, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I still don't love the teaspoon firing. I didn't get it.
I like the Marsh hiring, but I don't think you needed to be hiring a coach. I think Teresa
it didn't make any sense to me. Like you provide this coach with this roster, and then I wouldn't say she underachieved with that roster. It was probably about what people might have expected. And then, it just didn't make much sense to me. But I do like Tyler Marsh. I guess we'll see. Sad that Kennedy is gone.
Yeah.
The time she's been playing, she's been like, if you just pulled someone off the street who never watched the WNBA before and you just had them watch a Sky game last year, they'd be like, oh, she's like the best player in the league, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And now she's playing in Mexico. So
yeah, it is interesting. I think one of your points I want to circle back on is the Reese Cardoso front court together. There were some worries, like you said, that it wouldn't work together. They just were amazing. They fit actually really well together. And one thing, when Cardoso returned, I remember betting Angel Reese's rebounds under. So I was like, oh, she's playing next to maybe the tallest player in the league. These are going to go under. Nope, didn't matter at all. She still managed to get all of her rebounds. They were just that good on the glass. So this team, it doesn't have a ton of shooting, although adding Beck Allen and Ariel Atkins helps a ton on that front, which was a big weakness of this team. If they can take a decent number of threes and get a decent number of offensive rebounds, that's a really good start. Angel Reese is a really good defender. Cardoso is clearly a good defender. At the perimeter, you have a few more question marks. Beck Allen historically has been a good defender. She's getting up there a little bit in years, but solid defender. There's a lot to be intrigued by with this team, but I think the thing I come back to is there's just a lot of good teams in this league, and I think that this roster, top end talent wise, I think Cardoso can get there in the future, but isn't there yet. And so I lean their win total right now is 19.5. That's pretty high. I lean towards an under. I don't think it's a terrible number. I think they're going to win 18, 17, 18, 19 games. So I think I would have it like 18.5 instead of 19.5. So I lean under. But overall, I think this is going to be a team that's kind of competing for that final playoff spot. They clearly want to go for it too. That's one thing that, when we're looking at these win totals, is good to think about. Like the motivation's there for this team to go for it. They gave up their draft pick, their second round pick this upcoming year, but they gave up picks to kind of go for it. So I, I could be talked into either side of this. I just personally lean under in a league where I think there's a lot of talented teams that have the talent edge on Chicago, and Chicago's going to be able to outwork some of them, but I don't think enough to clear this number. So where do you come down on the 19.5?
Yeah, I probably also say the under. But this is a team that I probably would avoid altogether just because I like want to root for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause I think they'll be like fun to watch. So yeah, but I probably would also lean under there.
Yeah, I'll be watching a ton of Sky games. I do find Angel Reese to be one of the most like entertaining and like just catches your eyeballs players out there. I know she gets a lot of guff online. I think a lot of that guff. I think there's a lot of reasons for it. We don't need to go into it here. I think there's several overlapping reasons on that, but she is one of my favorite players in the league to watch, and I'm really excited to see if that front court can really level up to like you got two all-stars in your front court. You're in pretty good shape. So we'll see how that turns out this season. Kayla, I'm so sorry to do this to you. We are moving on to the Connecticut Sun. Before we get into it, let me say what to give away the preview in a bit to a degree. They're not going to be winning many games this year. Who is going to be your team that you pick up to root for, like in replace of the Connecticut Sun? Is it the Wings with Paige?
I mean, I have a lot of different teams that I
Yeah,
am
yeah.
a fan of. Not to sound spoiled, but being a UConn fan, we got players
All
everywhere
gravy.
that
It's
I
all
follow.
gravy.
You know what I mean? Like it is what it is. I'm a big Gabby Williams fan, so I'm always tuning in to whatever team she's on. Um, Obviously the Liberty with Stewie. So really, I'm kind of all over the place, but I certainly will be. I will watch more Wings games this year than I have probably ever combined in the last however many years.
That's very fair. All right, let's go into the Connecticut Sun. So last year they were 28-12. They lost to the Lynx in the semifinals. They didn't know it at the time, but that was the final iteration of the Sun. The Sun team that had made it to at least the semis in each of the last 6 seasons, which is really incredible. That level of consistency in a league with this much talent, really impressive. Of course, we don't need to belabor the point. They never got their ring, and the core broke up. So they lost Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, Brianna Jones, Dejanay Carrington, Ty Harris, aka the starting five for the team. They've literally lost the entire starting five. Marina Mabry came in, although she is, currently pending a trade request out, and Tina Charles came in. And Tina Charles, at this point in her career, incredibly skilled statistical player, but probably not on a lot of wing teams. They do have a new coach, but I want to just right off the back of the players out, I want to go to your 10-word preview because I love this. Your 10-word preview for 2025.
My 10-word preview is simply my whole family's gone.
It really is the end of an era. It was the family. They had, there were a few pieces that would come in and out, but that core was, for people who maybe don't follow W, it's like those core, like the Thunder in OKC, but they get so close time after time and they do all this winning and they're in the playoffs and they're, it seems like they're friends off the court. They're dating and married off the court. Like that core was like so closely put together. So what were some of your, we don't have to do this too long, but what were some of your like favorite memories of that Connecticut Sun core squad?
Well, it's funny because, well, not funny, it's more like sad and depressing. But I started really following the WNBA in 2019, which was the first year of that whole
Yeah.
the stretch, Um, and I don't know, I have fond memories of like the Jasmine Thomas teams.
Jasmine
Back
ruled.
in
Yeah.
like 2019. 2019 will always be special because that was the first year I like really started going to games. Um, and then 2020, I was gonna get season tickets. I had season tickets for 2020 pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, and then um, wobble and so on and so forth. Um, but definitely those like early the early what's the word I'm looking for? I was gonna say dynasty, but it's not a dynasty because they
I
didn't
think
win
there's, I
shit.
think you can call it a like.
No,
Well,
you
but you're
can't.
right. You
No,
probably
you can't. No,
dynasty.
you can't. But the early years of my son fandom were very, very fond.
The
Um,
era, I guess you can say an
yeah,
era, not
yeah,
dynasty. Probably.
era. There you go. That's the word. But yeah,
Um,
no, it's been a fun 6 years, even though it's been painful every year. Because I always like knew they weren't the best team in the league. Like I
yeah.
knew every year they weren't going to win, just the way the roster was constructed, and every year they'd be like one or two, three in the league, and they just couldn't get over the hump. So that was a little painful.
Yeah, and those early years, they even cycled coaches. They had the Kurt Miller years, they had the Steph White years, and now they have a new coach again. Which do you know how to pronounce his name
I
perfectly?
believe it's Rashid Mezian.
Okay,
I believe.
it's. I'm gonna leave it. We'll leave that one there. This is a trickier coach to pronounce. It's a trickier coach to find a lot about. He coached the Belgian national team to victory at Eurobasket 2023. That's kind of the big claim to fame that he has. Over from France. Do you know much about him in your son fandom, or are you going to kind of see how things play out this first year?
Not too much, honestly. I'm not super outside of like the Olympics. I'm not that tuned into like the
Same.
Belgian national team. I know that I was real hopeful that Emma Mieseman was going to come walking through those doors. Doesn't look like that's happening.
Yeah,
Uh,
sadly, I've
but
heard some rumors of her to Phoenix. I don't. Have you heard any rumors if she's
yeah,
even coming back?
I have
Yeah,
not. That'd be
love to
interesting.
see.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking at this team in general, like I feel so mean having you on just to then say sentences like this. I think this is the worst roster in the WNBA right now. Like even with Marina Mabry, and then if Mabry goes, they definitely are the worst. It's like them and the Valkyrie are kind of close with Mabry, and then if Mabry is out the door, it's like I do think this is the worst roster. Again, Tina Charles is a player who gets a lot of statistics, but doesn't do it. Hasn't been on a ton of winning teams. That could change. I just don't think this is the year it's going to change per se. Olivia Nelson Dodo, one of my favorite, most kind of like, oh, I hope she gets a chance. She's now going to get a chance, so that's a player to watch. I think she potentially could be a really solid player. She's just never going to be the type to put up 20 and 10. She's going to put up, I could see her scoring 12 points a game with 10 rebounds a game and playing really good defense and being really good player. She just is never going to really pop with like 20 points and 15 rebounds and crazy stuff like that. In the backcourt, it's a fair amount of questions right now. When you look over this roster, are there pieces you're excited about? Or are you kind of like, this is a year to get some draft picks? We were talking earlier about how because of WNBA structure, you kind of have to be bad for 2 years. So that 20-12 record is kind of ironically an anchor this year, where that's going to make a top pick hard. So yeah, I've been rambling for a while. This is your squad. What are your thoughts on this season?
A lot of thoughts. In terms of things I might be excited about, I think JC Sheldon is going to be. I think she's a WNBA player.
Yep.
I think she's going to be fun. Um, Layla Lacan, I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced, but when she comes over, I think she's also a WNBA player, and that I was excited when Rashid was hired because I knew that meant she was finally going to come
Nice.
over after being drafted. She was one of their draft and stashes. So yeah, I'm excited about that. My advice would be if you play fantasy, pick up Tina Charles because she's going to take 25 shots a game probably. Um,
She does not mind taking a lot of
nope,
shots and grabbing a lot of rebounds. So
nope.
I think that's a really good call because she'll be slept on. I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
she's absolutely gonna put up some monster numbers.
Someone has to score. It's going to be
Yep.
her or Marina, so,
Yep.
and going off of Marina. So in my opinion, I think what happened here, obviously we know she requested the trade and it was denied or whatever. And this is just solely my opinion. I have no information about any of this, but I think the Sun went to her and said, listen, play for us for these few months, ball out, and we will trade you in August.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I think is going on. Because to let her walk at the end of the year after you're finishing with the 12 seed makes absolutely no sense. So I think that's the only thing that makes any sense to me is that they're saying, we know you don't want to be here, but play for us and play hard, and we will get you somewhere where you have a chance to to compete
Well, listen,
for
if it's for
hopefully a draft pick.
yeah, if it's for a few months, you can like put up crazy numbers that will
Right.
help you at your next contract negotiation. So
Correct.
Marina is like one of the most competitive people on earth, so I know why she wants to be on a winning team, but like get those numbers for a minute and like be able to point to those when it comes negotiation time. So I think she could go bananas if she does play. We'll see if she does end up. I think it was a little injury that kept her out of the preseason. Did she didn't
Yeah,
play
I think it
tonight,
was
did she?
lingering from Unrivaled because she didn't really play at
Oh,
all, I don't think, in
very true.
Unrivaled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very true.
So yeah, that's what I think is going on there. And then my final thoughts are that we are entering the Sarah Strong sweepstakes
Oh,
early. We're just, we're tanking now for Sarah Strong.
I have some incredibly reckless Sarah Strong takes that like I was
Me too.
reckless with
Yeah.
my Juju takes and I was like, wait, can I just bump these all to like I still love Juju, but like Sarah Strong could be like the truth. She could be like, man, if she goes to the hometown Sun, that could be pretty cool. I hadn't even really thought about that, but that's like
Close
that,
to her mom who works for the Celtics.
oh, look at this. Look at you.
Come
Kayla
on.
came in
Come
with the vision
on.
here. I respect this. This is
Mhm.
good stuff. Yeah. Sarah Strong leading the like 2031 Sun into the postseason. I'm all here for. I'm all
Do
here
it.
for it. All right, let's wrap on the Sun with the win total. I mean, based on everything we said, it probably won't shock people. Win total's at 11.5, really low in a 44 game season. This is maybe my favorite bet of the Eastern Conference here. I like the under. I think this again. I think this has a chance to be the lowest win total team in the WNBA because they have to work off those 28 wins from last year. I think they're going to be very content to rack up the losses. It could be one of those where they get like 6 wins in the first like couple months and you're like, man, this is a little scary, and then like suddenly like the bottom just falls out and they win 2 games the rest of the season or something. So
Right.
I do
Especially
like,
if my script is correct and Marina is
yep,
gone for the last couple
exactly.
months of the season.
And it could Tina could even get flipped too. Like
Yeah,
if
you're right.
if a contender gets like, like, oh, we need a big just to fill like a six player off the bench, she could be a fit there. So you're joining on the under here?
Absolutely.
Is this one of your favorites as well, or do you have a couple other hidden away that are like a full best bet?
Yeah, I'd probably say yeah. I didn't actually bet it just out of respect. But yes, it probably is.
I respect that. I'm like the type that will like almost like bet against my team so that I'm covered either way. But I like to
I
hear
do
like,
that also, and people
yeah,
think I'm crazy. I did that with UConn the entire NCAA tournament. People think I'm crazy, but
it's worth the like the $10 to be like, all right, I'm I
yep,
win something if they lose. So
you get me, Jim.
exactly. All right, let's move on to the Indiana Fever. The probably the buzziest team right now. They've looked very good in the preseason. Last year they were 20-20. They lost in the first round to the Connecticut Sun. My joking notes here were nothing much happened here. Yeah, nothing much turned this franchise from this moribund hasn't made the playoffs in a decade to probably the franchise that is the face of the league for better and worse. Not even worse. I just mean we all know that all the Caitlin stuff, and Caitlin has proven herself already, and she had an awesome rookie year. She took her a second to adjust. I think most of us out there that follow the W are like it will take a second, but now she's here. She clearly is a really strong player, and they loaded up. They brought in DeWanna Bonner, Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham. They lost a couple of small pieces for sure, but I mean those three incoming are much more important than the outgoing. Even if I love Temi Fegbenley, they have a new coach, a defensive focus coach. The vision for this looks really nice right now. They brought in perfect pieces around Caitlin, both at a coaching and player level. My 10-word preview last year was slow the brakes. This year is all in. We'll get into it a little bit more after your 10-word preview, but there's a lot to be interested in here. What's your 10-word preview?
Maybe I'm a hater, but I think a tad overrated.
So this is interesting because everything I just said, I do think that like this is a like perfect coach for their system, perfect players to play next to Caitlin. Like this looks great. They have the second highest win total in the market, right? That's insane. This team last year by the Pythag was actually a pretty bad team. They're expected to jump like 18 wins year over year. Like, and again, we get a few more games this year, but overall, actually, let's lead with you because I agree that the gas is fully down. The gas pedal, like the market loves them. They are getting the coverage. Every single game is covered at all points. So talk to me about what you see as a little bit overrated about this squad right now.
Well, what is not overrated is Stephanie White. I love Stephanie White. I was heartbroken when I found out she was leaving Connecticut because I knew that meant she was going to Indiana.
Yeah.
Um, it was just kind of written in the stars, so I was upset about that. So I do think she is like the perfect coach for this team. I agree with you on that. I don't love the Natasha Howard edition. I just feel like her days are behind her, honestly. She really hasn't been great. And she got a max deal of 214,000. It's a lot. She doesn't she's such an inefficient player. And then is she gonna be taking shots away from Caitlin and Kelsey Mitchell? Like I don't know. I don't know. But three of players that are in the starting lineup and Caitlin, Kelsey Mitchell, and Joanna were top 20 in the league in field goal attempts last year. Joanna loves to kind of she's gonna throw up her shots even when they're not good shots. And those are just shots that are not going to be taken by one of the best, if not the best shooter in the league. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm interested to see kind of how that fit is. They're still going to be one of the better teams in the league, of course. They're going to be good. I would say top 4 or 5. I definitely still have like Vegas, Minnesota, and New York ahead of them, just
Yeah.
preseason rankings. You know what I mean? We'll get to when we get to the win totals, but obviously the books are still just preying on the Caitlin mania, which
Yeah, they really are.
to each their own. You can actually bet on Caitlin for Defensive Player of the Year on FanDuel. It's
That is
insane, but
that I hadn't caught that. That is amazing that they
here nor there. Brittany Sykes has worse odds than, but
oh,
anyways,
oh,
yeah. So those are kind of my general thoughts. Again, going to be a good team, no doubt about it. But they're like minus 230, I believe 235. I think I looked today to make it to the semis, and I don't know. It just seems like
yeah.
a lot with so many new pieces. So we'll see.
Well, and one thing I think is interesting that while you were talking about that, I thought through this, and I think you're right on that. Like they're going for it, and I hadn't really thought about it in this perspective until you brought up the contract of Natasha Howard. Because I'm talking about how I really like the fit of all this. Here's the thing, we haven't seen it. If it doesn't work, they're really locked in, and suddenly they don't really have much flexibility. Natasha Howard, I do think, is the most questionable of these pieces. The defense has also slipped. She either won a Defensive Player of the Year or was like runner up at one point.
2020, I believe she
I
was
think she
Defensive Player
won
of the
one.
Year. Yeah.
She, at least the metrics that have been available in the last few years have said that has fallen. Now maybe she's back on a winning team and really is like hyper motivated again. But I want to see that first. Dewana Bonner, as amazing as she is, definitely can be inefficient at times and is getting up there in age. She is one of the older players in the league. I think they'll be smart with her minutes. I think Sophie Cunningham is going to play a ton off the bench. She is my favorite for sixth player of the year, my favorite bet there. Ironically, I think the Fever in a lot of markets, I agree with you 100%. Like Caitlin MVP, I think is a little bit too high. Fever to win the title, I think is a little bit too high. So I think you're kind of doing here what I do in the NBA at times with the Celtics, where I'm like, listen, this is a good team. I just think the market's a little bit crazy. And, in the NBA, it's a little scarier because that's probably driven by, sharp bettors. Here, this is clearly driven by what you said, is like the books know that they are going to take an enormous handle on anything Fever that they list. So they're just going to juice everything Fever by a decent amount. Now, I will say, if we skip ahead to the win total here, the 31.5 I referenced, I think that's too high for sure. But there is a 29.5 out there, and that's a 2-win middle that you can bet. I like the under 31.5 more than I like the over 29.5. But that's kind of an interesting middle. If you want to give yourself a little bit of cushion, if you bet the over, or if you bet the under 31.5 and then just come back with a little on that over 29.5, I don't hate setting yourself up for a little bit of a middle there. Just because I do think this team's going to have a really high floor. Caitlin is going to be an incredible floor raiser. That I have almost no doubt of. I think I'm more skeptical on her when it comes to postseason. I really want to see what that looks like. I do the comparison I sometimes make is like those high usage players, when they get to the postseason, sometimes it gets a little bit trickier there. So I'll wait on betting them for title or anything, but I think they are going to win a fair amount of games. So I don't mind a sprinkle on this middle. What do you think about the win total singular if it's 31.5 you like, or trying to squeeze in that middle on the 2 win total there?
I really like the under 31.5. That's just a lot of games
That's a
to
ton.
win. So yeah, it's a lot of games. So I would definitely go under here. The
Yeah,
31.5, that's high.
yeah. The under is the side of that I like more for sure. So all right, let's move on to the reigning champs, the New York Liberty. Last year, 32-8, won the title, as I just said. They brought the first pro basketball championship to the city of New York since the 70s. And I was there, and it was stressful. It was like it was fun, but it was the most stressful thing ever. Sabrina and her 1 for 19 with, we learned later, busted up hand, that she was just like, I'm gonna shoot through this. And then Fibich made some big shots, and Stewie with the foul call and the non-foul call. And it was a crazy finals, but they got it done. They crossed the super team got it done. The year before, they kind of faltered in a big moment against the Aces, and this year they semi faltered at times during the finals. But they also had the game winner from Sabrina, which is going to go down in team and I think league history as one of the best clutch shots in a big game. And in the offseason, they sent out one of the older players on their team. Courtney Vandersloot's still great, but in the playoffs, it was kind of clear that she couldn't hang at all times in the postseason. They replaced her with Natasha Cloud. This is like literally the player that I had been, when I saw this super team formed, I was like, man, Natasha Cloud would be perfect to have next to Sabrina. Now they have that. The only worry is Benijah Laney Hamilton's down with an injury. But even on that front, I think they have either Niara Sabali, who was, maybe the best player in Game 5 of the WNBA Finals last year, and Leonie Fibich, who, as the postseason went along, got more and more minutes. There's a lot to love with this Liberty squad. My 10-word preview is actually a little bit ironically, given I just said that, there's questions too. And so my 10-word preview is Stewie's knee, Sab's hand. There are some questions in Brooklyn. So I've laid out both sides of the positive and the negative. What's your 10-word preview? And then feel free to jump into kind of your thoughts on the team as a whole.
I
just saw your 10-word preview. This is so good.
Is Marine is back, and that's all I care about. The most fun player in the league, in my opinion. She was great in the preseason game that was on a little while ago. She's just so fun. I just love her. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Just in terms of my overall thoughts on the Liberty this year, the UConn fan in me kind of wants Stewie to have sort of like an FU season after some like legacy almost tanking playoff performances. And I hate to say that, but she was, in my opinion, very clearly like the best player in the world, and has now kind of slipped to like number 3 in the league, honestly. And I hate that for her. And I know a lot of it, she hasn't really been healthy, and the Achilles and then the other leg, and now the whatever is going on now. So really hope we can see her healthy and kind of back to being like one of the best players in the league. I love the fit with Cloud and Sabrina. I think it's so important for Sabrina to have like a dynamite defensive perimeter partner, because she's not exactly lighting it up on the defensive end. So I think I don't know that it could have been more perfect, that the way it all kind of fell into place. So I love that. And then I also love the bet she wins Fibich most improved pick. And if you factor in those increased minutes with the Laney injury, like you had mentioned, I do wonder, like, was she too good last year to be most improved? I don't know. Probably not, because she didn't really emerge until like later in the season.
Yeah.
But so I liked that pick. To shout out to bet she wins over there.
Yeah, that is that most improved player is one of my favorite bets from this offseason in general. And I do think that you're right to focus on Stewie, because I think Stewie is what matters in the long term, but I also think Stewie is kind of what matters when you think about a win total in the regular season. The Liberty are going to make the playoffs. They honestly don't really care, and that's why I think the win total isn't maybe as high as folks would imagine. It's 31.5. It is the same as the Indiana Fever, which seems crazy. They cleared this last year in just 40 games. But I do wonder if they slow roll some of these their star players right now who are nursing injuries. I mean, Stewie is like semi-fresh off a knee injury, a knee surgery that she got between Unrivaled and the WNBA season. I haven't seen anything like that that's going to be slowing her down, but I don't think they're going to be pressing her. Like they did this with Jonquel Jones last year. They kind of revved her up from like 20 minutes at the start of the season all the way up to 30 by the end. I could see them doing that with Stewie to start the season, and maybe even Sabrina, who still didn't look quite right in Unrivaled. The hand still looked like it was bothering her at times. And again, then we have the Lainey Hamilton injury. I don't think they're going to be wanting to press anyone. The institutional depth there and like talent, Maureen Johannes on the bench. You mentioned her, obviously. Like, there's just enough there to win a lot of games. They will coast to 28 wins. The thing will be if they press that, if they really press the gas pedal down to get to that 32. I do lean over still. I think, they won 32 last year. We get 4 more games. They brought in Natasha Cloud. There's a lot to love here. The worry is that they get to, we've seen it's hard to go back to back. The Aces did it, but then on that third year, the legs started to wear down and the win total started to drop. And it was clear that they were kind of saving themselves potentially a little bit for postseason. I think the Liberty could get there. The only thing against that is between Minnesota, Las Vegas, and now potentially even Indiana, there's going to be enough teams at the top of the league that if you don't want to slip to like a 4 or 5 seed and then have to play one of those top teams on the road. So I think there will be motivation enough that I do lean over on this 31.5. I don't think it's like a hammer by any means. But I do like the over here for the Liberty. Are you on either side of this number?
I think I'm going to go against the grain here. This will be the first one. I think I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to lean under for a lot of reasons that you just said. It's so hard to repeat. The Aces did it, and I don't know that it'll ever be done again. Like, it's so hard these days. Maybe not never again, but you know what I mean. It's hard to do. On paper, I think this is probably the best team in the league. But I'm not at all going to be surprised if they're a 2 or 3 seed. And I do think I'm interested to see, like, going off what you said, just in terms of, not if you're in the playoffs, not pushing the envelope with running your starters into the ground, because keep in mind we have the longer playoff series now. So our team is going to be a little more inclined to say, all right, I'm going to give my starters a little bit more rest once I know I have this locked up, because I know I have a 7-game series in front of me as opposed to a 5. I don't know if that'll factor into it.
No, that's the kind of, I actually think that's really sharp and really something that can, that is, those little things are actually things that I think for bettors are hugely important. I think you're 100% right to focus on that, and teams being even more, wanting to be preserved for a postseason with that big 7-game number that we'd never seen before. That we saw how by the end of game 5 of the WNBA finals last year, both teams were beat. They couldn't have gone 2 more games. So I think that it is very important to highlight that change that is being made. Those changes are really good spots for bettors to focus on in general. All right, with that, let's move to the Washington Mystics, final team in the Eastern Conference. 14-26 last season. Another team kind of in a transition year. That this was a team that they only missed the postseason for the second time since 2016. Really had a really impressive run there. Not quite the Connecticut Sun, but they got it done one time. They kind of were the inverse of the Sun, where they were making the playoffs but not to the semis. But then they got their ring. They were wrecked by injuries last year, but they were pesky. Shout out Andrew O'Connor-Watts, friend of the show. He'll be on at some point this year. Mystics first half opponent full game. Those reverse correlated parlays. They would always be around in the first half, and then they would lose by the end of the game because they were just kind of that pesky team. Players out, Ariel Atkins and Carly Samuelson. Ariel Atkins definitely key. Carly Samuelson maybe a little bit less so, but not a lot in. It's just rookies. It's Sonia Citron with the 3rd pick. It's Kiki Iriafen with the 4th pick. And it would have been Georgia Amore with the 6th pick, but she unfortunately is out for the season with a knee injury, which is really a bummer. I was excited to see her on a Mystics team that was going to give her minutes. So they do indeed have a new coach, of course. This is the year of the new coach, Sidney Johnson. So he was an Ivy League player, then an Ivy League coach. Another coach I don't know a ton about, to be honest. He doesn't have kind of that distinct style of a Lynn Roberts or a Carl Smesko where it's like, threes, pace. He was just kind of a really solid coach who's getting a chance in W. So don't know a ton about him. My 10-word preview, interesting pieces, can already see them setting up for Juju. So what is your 10-word preview for the Mystics?
Mine is AZ Fudd is going to be so happy playing for her hometown team.
Yeah, we are in lockstep here of this team is looking towards the future. So do you want to I actually didn't know that AZ was a DMV DMV player. So why don't
Mhm.
you talk about why you're seeing the Mystics in kind of this rebuild mode?
They're just gonna be bad. They're just, they're young. They're gonna be, I like use the word pesky because they definitely, I think, will be pesky. Um, I'm really hoping that they can stay healthy. Shakira, Aaliyah, I know they're
Yeah.
both, I think right now, both still out, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Um, I know Shakira was hurt most of the season last year, and by the time she came back, she wasn't really able to contribute too much the last few games of the season. So, yeah, I'm really hoping they can stay healthy and if they can keep this kind of young core together with, a first round draft pick next year, a first round draft pick in 2027,
Yep.
and who knows what we're talking about. I think they could make something shake. But my other note was that if I was a rookie, this is where I would want to be drafted because they have just you get a roster spot, you get a roster spot. They have a lot of spots, so this is where I would want to be drafted.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that the writing's kind of already on the wall. I think you're seeing players that they don't want to push through injuries. I think that's going to be kind of the thing all year. If this team were fully healthy all year, there's another future friend of the show, Kirk Evans, is really high on this Mystic squad, but I just don't think they have much motivation to. They're going to be the 8th seed at best. Like what are we doing here? I think that they have a bigger term vision here. They got all these picks this year. They got that Citrone, Kiki, and Amor. That's like a really interesting little trio to try out. And then future draft picks as well to kind of put with that Shakira Austin. They have a very clear timeline. Unlike some teams who are trying to split it and try and do young and old, they're just young. And like Emily Engstler is even kind of an interesting piece. And then, Brittany Sykes is the one veteran they have. But last year we saw, she got hurt and they didn't rush her back by any means. They said, take your time coming back. I think we'll see that again this year. Brittany Sykes overs were a really fun play to start the year last year. I think we'll probably get some of the same because if she's out there, she's going to be getting up shots, especially with this squad around her. Kiki Area Finn looks really like positively aggressive. I thought she kind of took a step back at USC this year from what I had seen from her at Stanford. At Stanford, I was like, oh, like this is like a top 1 or 2 pick. This year, I was like, I don't see it as much. But in the preseason, it's preseason, we don't want to overweight it too much. But I've been very impressed with just like kind of her aggressive approach to the sport in general. So I think she's going to be one to keep an eye on as well. I don't think there's a ton of rookie of the year because her odds are a little bit shorter. So I'm not sure if I would be going that direction for a shorter play, but I think she will be in the conversation. It's just the books already know that, so there's not a ton of value there. We can keep this one honestly relatively short. If you have anything else to say on the squad, feel free. But also, I'm fine moving over to the win total 15.5. I like this under. This is probably my second favorite play of the podcast. Again, this is a team that true talent wise, I think is probably like an 18 to 20 win team. I just think they're going to shut down players as soon as they can. Because Shakira Austin's one, especially where she's insanely good. Like I don't think people realize how good she is. When she was on the court last year, they had a defensive rating of like 91. But the thing is, we've seen her be not on the court most of her career. And if they have any excuse to kind of shut down, I think they want her to play, 15, 20 games. You don't want her to be out the whole season and miss a year and, gather some rust. But I don't think she's going to be playing all 44 games. I think, she'll be in that 20 game range and they'll be solid when she's on the court. But with all the talented teams in the league, I think there's a lot more room to be bad to slide into that, bottom 3 than there is to be good and slide into like the 7th or 8th spot and just get swept in the first round. So this is one of my favorite plays. This is an under for me for the Washington Mystics.
1000% agree. 15.5. I think that's pretty high. I think with everything that you just said in terms of them shutting down possibly their best players if they have a little hitch in their giddy up, I think this could be the worst team in the league. Like I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah.
they are even worse than Connecticut. Honestly, I think I don't think they're going to be very good. So we'll see.
No, I think you're right about the floor for this team being they just shut like everything down and they are in that full bottom tier. So all right, let's wrap the Eastern Conference there. Kayla, thanks so much for coming on and chatting hoop. I'll do my little teases upcoming here. We've got the opening night preview. It's coming later this week. We have because this is being released on Monday. We're pre-recording, so I don't want to confuse any Kayla here is like what. We will have basketball this week. It will be on Friday. We'll have the your first episode of previewing the opening weekend. I'm going to have Brian Fonseca on that. And then we'll be back at it a week from now with Dano Mataya to recap the first weekend. So we're going to have real basketball to talk about. I've had a blast on these previews, but really excited to actually have the basketball here to talk about. So everyone watching, make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube. Everyone who's listening, obviously rate and review the podcast as well. That's very much appreciated. Download the Action app if you can. Get those picks from yours truly and a lot of the guests that are coming through here. Thanks to David Payne on the audio. Thanks to Gifford Gould on the YouTube. Kayla, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to have you back during the season and see if how Paige is doing and if your Connecticut Sun aren't causing you too much pain.
Thank you, Jim. It's always a pleasure.
Excellent. And for now, let's get buckets.